All right. Good afternoon. Campbell McCrary here, Amvest Capital in New York City. Welcome to the Amvest Capital Inc. live webinar with Medallion Resources. Medallion trades on the venture as MDL, Mike Delta Lima, and MLLOF on the OTC, Mike Lima Lima Oscar Foxtrot. We do hope you'll enjoy today's program. We'll also be available in replay mode. Amvest Capital is a New York-based specialist investment management and corporate finance firm focused solely on the natural resource sector. Please send in your questions. We'll ask them in real time during the show. The replay will be available later at amvestcapital.com/webinars, and will also be sent in to you. Amvest is a New York-based specialist investment management corporate finance firm focused solely on the natural resource sector. Please note this call is for informational purposes only. Very pleased to have with us today Mark Saxon, who is the president and CEO and director of the company, Medallion. Geologist by background, he was most recently president and CEO of Leading Edge Materials, focused on the development of heavy rare earths and other European mineral properties. He's more than 25 years of experience in the resource industry, representing junior and senior companies with a particular focus on critical raw materials. Again, following the presentation, Amvest will ask questions of management and hopefully ones that you in the larger listening audience have sent in. So here is Mark Saxon live early morning in Melbourne, Australia, actually. This is just... So.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, Campbell. And sure. Yeah, happy to say that not too early, the sun's rising, and yeah, very happy to be here talking to you. So I guess, yeah, thank you very much, of course, for the support of Amvest, and they're a great shareholder. And this format that we're talking on now is a great format for companies to share their stories. And personally, I've been watching many of your good shares. So as Campbell introduced, my name is Mark Saxon, and I am the CEO of Medallion Resources, a TSX-V listed company with the symbol MDL. So for myself, I am an Australian, as you can probably tell, and I'm presently based near Melbourne in Australia. And yeah, obviously we've been through some challenging times and looking forward to getting back on planes and meeting people in person soon. I'm a geologist by training, and I've had about 12 years working in the rare earth metal sector, and yeah, across many countries. So Medallion is quite a small company, and we've had a key and critical focus on technologies for the rare earth sector, and we've had that for about 10 years, well before I joined the company. So our story is now starting to gain traction, I think, and over the past 6 months in particular, and we've seen that in the share price, and we're getting extremely optimistic about the role we can play in the energy transition, and yeah, it's an exciting place to be. So today I'd like to share some of that story and yeah, some of the forward-looking areas that we're working on, and yeah, give people a better understanding of the company and the path we're on. So I guess, first of all, let's not forget that rare earths are a fairly small and complex industry, and I'd like to just say that Medallion is one of the few companies that has developed a technology that and a business model that really takes us into the future, and is one of the ones that will really play a major contribution in the rare earth sector as we go in. So the essential disclaimer, of course, from a Canadian company, I will allow you to read that at your leisure. And yeah, obviously there'll be forward-looking statements, and yeah, I'll let you deal with that in your own time. So this afternoon, I'm starting with at the very top of the rare earth story before we dig into some details on Medallion's positioning as a business. So the Medallion business case and strategy is based essentially on the biggest investing theme that has probably ever existed: the energy transition and electrification. So this theme is going to affect every part of every life on the planet, I believe, and fundamentally, I guess what's happened is that humans have taken 300 million years of carbon sitting in the rocks below our feet, and we've burnt it all in 100 years. So we can't really be surprised that's had an effect, and it's now what we do about that effect. So I think these macro scale drivers are going to be with us for many decades. But the macro scale drivers there are so large that really, how do you invest in them? It's very difficult to do. So sitting in below those major trends are a whole range of other trends, I guess, that the energy transition are going to influence. But do you invest in solar or wind or Tesla or Volkswagen, and who is the winner? But the trends underneath are a little bit easier and bite-sized to invest in. So as we turn to renewables and we turn to energy storage and we turn to electrification, we obviously need new materials. These new materials are coming from a whole new set of supply chains and locations where Europe and the US really have not engaged with in the past, and where traditional customers have a much lower degree of influence because they haven't been buying from those locations. And on top of that, I guess there's a very strong push towards ESG and sustainability, and that's a great thing for the industry. And really, the customers are now asking us about, please tell us about the security and the ESG factors within our supply chains. This is a great thing. Because the energy transition arrived with us pretty quickly, the exploration and mining industry, which I've been part of for 30 years, has really struggled to keep up. And so there's a shortfall now for lithium and cobalt and copper and rare earths. And I guess when we think about how geologists work, we're not paid to go and look for things that may be valuable in 20 years' time. We're looking for things that are valuable now. And so there hasn't been a great deal of money spent on those energy transition materials. So that's creating a whole lot of niches and opportunities to invest in. And so when we look at what Medallion has chosen to invest in over the last 10 years, one of these niches is the rare earth element niche. And that's where Medallion has developed a remarkable expertise through 10 years of fairly consistent work. So over the past 10 years, as the rare earth demand has grown and as prices have gradually picked up, Medallion's had a clear niche focus, and this is to become a sustainable supplier of the magnetic rare earth elements. So our business model is one that can be financed pretty much in any part of the cycle, and we believe it's going to be robust enough to withstand whatever happens in the industry more broadly, and that's including the Chinese influence. So our focus has entirely been on the magnetic metals, and we can see them on the screen there in the little red boxes, which is Nd neodymium, Pr praseodymium, Dy dysprosium, and Tb terbium. So those metals, the metals that Medallion will be producing in the future, will go into permanent magnets, that little silvery disc there. But really, that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is the boxes at the bottom there, which is all of the applications for all of those metals. And really, that is the future. That's the place where people are interested in. And it's not about production. It's about the opportunity given by all of those equipments and technologies. I skipped over a little bit, but of course, a very important factor when we talk about rare earth elements is a geopolitical theme, and that keeps on rebounding time after time. I said that nobody pays us to go and explore for the metals that nobody needs, but of course that's an Australian view or a Canadian view or a US view, but it's not Chinese thinking, and it's not the Chinese view. So the Chinese have invested for a very long time in rare earth elements when the market was very small, when it really wasn't very profitable or interesting. And they've had geologists going around the world and looking at projects and ideas where geologists like myself, we didn't get paid and we didn't have the motivation to go there. So this means that China is now in an extremely strong position, not just in rare earths, but in many critical materials, and they're very well placed to be the dominant supplier of EVs and wind turbines and magnets and small motors and solar panels for a very long time to come. So they were the ones that identified, I guess, this boom early, and really they're the ones that are taking control. But now every country is trying to get involved in renewable energy and batteries and EVs and create the jobs and the tax revenues. And that requires access to the materials, and that's Medallion's job to be able to provide them. So I guess if you don't believe me, and I would suggest probably do your own research on top of what I would ever say. There's so much interest now coming in the rare earth sector, it really is quite remarkable. And after 12 years, it's taken me by surprise. So we can see some quotes there from the head of the European Commission, that Joe Biden as he came in as president. And very importantly, the right-hand statement there is from Chamath Palihapitiya, and he was an early investor in Facebook, and he's just been part of the relaunch of MP Materials. So that really is showing us the story has crossed over from the traditional mining community and is now sitting within, say, a Silicon Valley or a tech investing community. So we're opening the door now to a much, much larger group of investors, and that's going to be extremely good for the industry over the longer term. And those investors have different expectations as well in terms of ESG and traceability. So those of us who've been around for a while, we know that yeah, we had a boom about 10 years ago, and yeah, is it different? And in my feeling, absolutely it is. And the breadth and the broadness of the market is now much greater. So last time, I guess the industry was driven in particular by defence concerns. Now, really, it's entirely about access to the materials for the green energy transition, and that's really exciting. It's a much more positive thing, I think, for us to be involved in. And yeah, certainly something that I'm enjoying myself. So Medallion's vision and mission against that sort of very large and hot backdrop, and we're executing on a very clear vision. So I've been leading the company for a little less than 12 months, but it was the vision that's existed before me, and the one that's really guiding the work that we do. So we've learned from our competition, and as I mentioned, the Chinese competitors, they got to the industry first and found their place. They didn't steal rare earth production from the West, but they took something that nobody else wanted, and they invested and optimized. And Medallion has followed that path as well. And our business model is to use a byproduct mineral that really nobody else is wanting at the moment. So we're looking ahead, and we're focused entirely on the magnets metals, so the ones that really have great future demand. And again, Nd, Pr, Dy, Tb. So we're not trying to go out and find markets for obscure metals that are small and irrelevant and trying to invent the technologies as well. We've got a healthy growing market that is very sustainable. In our sector, it's the rare earth magnet metals that have the high growth, and that's when you think about EVs and robotics and drones and wind turbines. The markets are high growth, and therefore our metals are high growth. And of course, we're extremely focused on creating a safe and sustainable business, and this is really the core of what we're trying to achieve. And I guess when we think about it, the business case of rare earth elements, and for battery metals as well beside that, is entirely about supplying materials to companies who make products that reduce the environmental impact. And really, the expectation is therefore on us as mining companies to be able to match those goals. So my very strong belief is that environmental sustainability and innovation on behalf of Medallion will deliver us commercial sustainability. And if those two things aren't aligned, then we won't be in business for long. So it's a very core part of our business to have environmental sustainability. Yeah, I guess to now look a little bit closer at Medallion Resources, and yeah, this is the fundamentals of the company. And as of yesterday, our share price has had a good progressive rise, and yeah, I was very pleased that last night when I made this graph, I had to change the y-axis to increase the scaling. So yeah, we don't get to do that very often in small companies. So the commodity market has improved dramatically over the period that I've shown there. The rare earth market's improved dramatically by itself, and of course, Medallion has been hitting milestones and also completed a recent acquisition. And so all of those things, I think, are being factored into our share price. I haven't shown it there, but we've got very good cash in the bank. We've had great exercise of warrants, so we have more cash in the bank, I think, than perhaps the company has had for yeah, certainly for the last 5 years, and so we're in a very healthy place to execute on our milestones. And of course, yeah, it would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to our team, and there's me at the top. A slightly old photo comparing how I looked this morning, but yeah, the rest of the team is with us there, and we've got a great mix of skills. In particular, at the bottom there, I'd like to make mention of Dan Hassler, and Dan has just recently joined our advisory board. Dan's a representative of the group that we made the recent acquisition of about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and yeah, is a core part of our team and great experience in the industry as well. So yeah, many thanks to Dan for joining us. So no chemistry lessons, and yeah, too late in the afternoon or early in the morning to achieve that, but I'd just like to introduce some of the fundamental thoughts around the rare earth elements. And we've got a great listening audience, and I know there's a few returns, but I'd like to make sure that we all have the same set of knowledge. So rare earths are not one metal, they're a group of metals, and each metal has very similar chemical properties, but they have quite different magnetic and electrical properties. To capture the magnetic and electrical properties, they need to be separated into their individual metals. So when we see a company sort of quote the TREO number, it's all of those metals added together into one number, which is not particularly useful, I must say. But all rare earths are not created equally, and Medallion's interest is entirely on the red ones. The magnetic rare earths are introduced earlier, and they're shown there in red. And the reason for that, we can see the dramatic range of prices in the different metals that make up the REE portfolio. So the metals in the bottom tend to have smaller markets but higher prices. Lanthanum and cerium, we can see the pricing there of about $1.50 or something like that. So they're the ones that yeah, bulk markets but low pricing, and yeah, so not places that we're working in. The magnet metals form the right balance between large markets and healthy pricing. And yeah, we can see there that the neodymium market value was pretty substantial in the last year, and that's growing very quickly. And that's something that has room for, yeah, certainly for Medallion and for many other players as well outside the Chinese markets. I've been asked by someone that was dialing into the call just to give a bit of context about the rare earth market in general, and yeah, to provide an introduction to sort of new investors. And I dropped out this graph last night, which shows sort of the build-up of rare earth production and consumption over about the last 60 years. So yeah, we can see very strong growth in the industry over that time. And obviously the pie chart gives us a pretty clear message that that China, despite investments in other parts of the world, despite lots of exploration going on, Chinese production is still very dominant in our sector. So the red is Chinese production, which is, let's say, about 60%. But we need to add on to that the production that's coming from the US and the production that's coming from Myanmar, because both of those sets of products ends up in the Chinese market. And so it's Chinese customers that are actually adding the value and using those to build wind turbines and build EVs. It is not being used directly in the US or obviously the Myanmar markets. So it's not really until you get through to the Australian production, which is Alliance Corp and Northern Minerals out here in Australia, that you really get sort of an independent supply chain. And that's a fairly small part of the supply chain, and obviously that's a concern from many regards. As I introduced, not all rare earths are created equally, and with our continued focus there, I guess, on the rare earth metals, I've tried to use similar colours, and we can see that while the magnet metals only make up about 25% of the sales by volume, they contribute about more than 90% by value. And that's really because it's the sweet spot of the industry where we've got both high pricing and we've got robust, large-scale markets that are very predictable and yeah, less volatile and responding to supply and demand features. And lastly, this will appear in the handouts and documentation, so I won't touch on that one. But the price growth and the demand is driven by the exciting technologies. It's not about rare earths themselves; it's really about what they can do. So just to conclude, sort of the macro picture, there's some very substantial themes, and some of the biggest themes, as I said, that have ever been in terms of investing. That's really driving people towards rare earth elements, and we're certainly seeing it from website hits. We're seeing it from our share price. We're seeing it from government interactions with Medallion Resources. It's a very exciting time to be in the business because we've got an alignment of the environmental story, emission policies, politics, supply security. All of those are now aligned together, and that's creating a very robust business for Medallion and for some competitors as well. So if we dig deeper now into what Medallion is doing as a company, we need, I guess, first to take a little look at the industry and how it's structured today. And Medallion is taking a very different path. And so, yeah, I'd like to sort of show those two paths. So the rare earth industry has numerous steps to get from mine to magnet, and that's a little more complex than typical mining companies. Chinese suppliers, as you can see in the sort of pinky red bar, they do everything. They do everything from mine development all the way through to magnet production. They've been in the industry for a long time, and so they've really found the way to maximise the industry. They've integrated those into single enterprises, and that means that they can lose money in one part of the supply chain and make it back up in the other part, and that's very smart business, you know, in critical metals. The Western industry instead has taken a slightly different path, and we can see there from my chart that there's lots and lots of small companies in Australia and the US and Canada who are doing good jobs at exploration and drilling out deposits, finding the economics of those deposits. but very few of them have managed to cross the major hurdle to get across into production. And that's a very big hurdle. At the moment, there's no rare earth project funded globally for development because the capital cost is very significant and the market risk is too high. And so there's no major project that is moving. Some of those projects have been stalled for more than 20 years and yeah, further research and optimization, but the capital cost doesn't go away and may never go away, and they may never be developed. So there's only two companies that have crossed over, and that's MP Materials and Linus Corp, and they've both got very sort of individual cases that may never be repeated. So that's not Medallion. Medallion is doing something really quite different, and we have taken a business model that the Chinese are applying, and our business model is to take a byproduct mineral that's called monazite. We take it from mineral sand mining, and those mines are operating today globally. Those mines are already discovered, they're already built, they're already providing millions and millions of tons of zircon and titanium to markets. And in those sand mines, there is another mineral, and that's called monazite. And at the moment, it either goes to waste or, from our little graphic there, we can see it goes directly into the Chinese customers. And so that's coming from the US, and it's coming from Australia, it's coming from Mozambique, it's coming from South Africa, all into the Chinese market and adding into the Chinese processes. So the business model that we are applying in Medallion is to divert that material and take it into our process and operate that process in locations outside of China, and to give a whole new alternative using that material for customers. So I said in the early part that copying the Chinese business model is perhaps one of the smartest things to do, and that's the path we're on, and we're now very advanced in that process. I guess one of the exciting things when we're talking about mineral sand monazite is that there's many suppliers around the world, and yeah, I'll show you a map in a moment, but yeah, we're now talking to various suppliers in various parts of the world about having an approach where we have hubs in various locations and using that to be a supplier in various parts of the world. So mineral sand monazite is the foundation of our story, and it's a great low-cost byproduct feedstock. It's available now, and in fact, you can jump on Alibaba and you can find some to buy, yeah, literally with a delivery in the short term. Suppliers are very geographically diverse, and the owners are very diverse, and so there's really no chance of a monopoly developing. So we're always going to have access to that material, and we'll be forming long-term contracts to get long-term access to that material. So we'll be diverting that mineral sand monazite, and literally it's a brown sand. We'll be diverting that into our processing hubs, and we'll be processing it with the Medallion monazite process, which is a best-in-class method to extract the rare earths and add maximum value to them. We've had a look at the economics, and we've also had a look at the life cycle analysis of what we're doing, and it's very clear that we're not going to be carrying monazite around the world and increasing the carbon footprint of those materials. That really doesn't make sense. It doesn't help anyone, and yeah, so to be mining in Africa and processing in the US, or mining in Australia and processing in Canada, a very challenging scenario in terms of the CO2 footprint. So our view and the most positive way that we think we can operate is to develop hubs that will be close to the suppliers, and that will give us the lowest impact on the environment and the lowest CO2 embedded within our materials. So we have many prospective suppliers around the world, and we've just shown a map there of where mineral sand mining is happening today, and we can see some natural clusters. So an African cluster, a US cluster, an Australian cluster, a Southeast Asian cluster, and yeah, some obviously yeah, places that are very attractive for us to operate in each of those locations. Of course, when we talk about mineral sand monazite, there's always one issue that we need to deal with, and that's the uranium thorium that I mentioned on the slide before. So uranium and thorium are radioactive elements, and almost always they're contained within mineral sand monazite. In some jurisdictions they're a positive, in other jurisdictions they're a negative, and so that's obviously forming part of our decision about where we locate them. I've shown on one of those early slides, and I mentioned earlier the recent acquisition that we made, and the recent acquisition is the separation part of our business, and yeah, didn't emphasize it appropriately when I was on that slide, so let's just kick back to it. So the separation part of the business is where a mixture of rare earth elements are separated out into the individual metals. The metals really can't be used until they're separated into individual elements. So Medallion has recently partnered and invested in a technology that's coming from Purdue University, developed by a great scientist there named Linda Wang. And so Linda has been working on rare earth separation for about 10 years. And Medallion was looking for partnerships. We spoke to all of the prospective separation partners globally. And we came across Linda's work because it was published in the Journal of Green Chemistry. And that journal obviously captures some of the latest thinking in metals and mining and technologies, and that really caught our eye as something that we would like to have as part of our brand as well. So we did a deep dive into Linda's technology and compared it to the other technologies, and it's a great process. It's a chromatography-driven system, which means it's water-based, it's solvent-free, it's not connected to the petrochemicals industry. Very few disposal issues, very high reuse of chemicals and reagents. And I guess most importantly, the Purdue University and Linda's team are global leaders in pharmaceutical processing. And so the group has, and locally around Purdue, there's a great deal of support in terms of how to execute on the business model and to build chromatography systems. So I'm not going to dig too deeply into the chromatography system, and that's something that's really standalone, and I'll have Linda or her team in a future presentation present on it. However, the test work so far has shown that the ligand-assisted displacement chromatography is perhaps 100 to 1,000 times more efficient in the separation of rare earth elements than the embedded technologies, and obviously that's a pretty eye-catching number, and it's something very exciting for us to be investing in. So we're now going through the process of installing capacity and gaining staff in that region, and that will be greatly supported by Dan Hassler, who's based down there as well, and the Purdue University research will be paired very, very closely with the existing Medallion Monazite process. So I guess when we look at the business model as a whole now, and if we look back beyond that 1 month window when we acquired the LAD system, then we were just the Medallion Monazite process. A great system using the best feedstock, a widely available feedstock at a fairly low cost, and on top of that we have developed a technique that extracts the rare earths from that feedstock in an extremely efficient, economically and environmentally efficient manner. So we've been very pleased with what we're doing, but now we're partnered with the LAD process, and the LAD chromatography process means that we can add extra value downstream to the rare earth metals, creating a whole new range of opportunities. And as we talk to customers and as we talk to regions, then we're able to provide a much more complete solution. So very soon, Medallion will be providing a solution that really is cradle to grave, I guess, for the mineral sand monazite industry. We'll be able to take mineral sand monazite and deliver separated rare earth products that will be heading straight off into the magnet market, and that's very exciting. Perhaps a little easier to visualize the pairing of the two sides of that business now, and I've published this slide many times. But visually, we can visualize the flow of mineral sand monazite from various parts of the world. We aggregate it, we grind it, dissolve it, and we extract the valuable materials from it. We then pass that into rare earth separation and pull out the individual metals, which will then proceed to the customers. We can provide that as a service. We can provide as toll treatment. We're looking at all different business models around that one. But I guess the most exciting thing is that this is a very scalable and repeatable business. We're not tied to one location. We're not tied to one deposit. We're able to speak to mineral sand monazite suppliers across the world and find the best business models that are going to work with those suppliers. And as a customer or as a partner, that will come through in the next sort of 6 to 12 months, I believe. And all of that work is supported now by a life cycle assessment. And so that's underway at the moment, and that'll be delivering and helping us to make sure we make the best decisions in terms of minimising the CO2 footprints, and in both our Medallion monazite process and also the LAD chromatography. I guess one of the most exciting things now, because we have that permanent pairing between the rare earth extraction and the rare earth separation, is that we can intensify our process. We can make sure that we keep the best technologies in the best places, and we can share technologies across the two sides and keep materials in solution, and that's really going to accelerate our R&D and improve our economics all around. So coming to the end of the presentation, and I haven't been watching the clock, hopefully we're doing okay, but looking ahead, and we have an extremely busy work schedule for the next 12 months, and as I said at the start, we're funded for a lot of work that's coming down the line. So we're very close to the completion of a techno-economic assessment or study that is defining 7,500 tonnes per year of monazite feedstock, a plant that will process that and produce rare earth metals. We're doing the production of rare earth carbonate in that process, and we're not moving through to include the lead separation process because that acquisition is a little bit too new, but we'll be adding that on over time, and that will be a real value add for us. So we're expecting that to be published in late Q1, early Q2, so it's extremely close. And in part of that process, we're developing a very robust model that we can, I guess, pick up and put in any location around the world. And so we can then be comparative of the economics and also of the environmental footprint of pretty much any site where mineral sands exist, and we can determine the cost structure around that and make our decisions on that basis. As I said, the life cycle assessment will come with that. I guess then once we have that in place, our next big announcement will be the operation, will be an operating location and partnerships around that. So that's something that we're working very hard on at the moment. And then I guess moving on from that, we proceed with a little bit more R&D, and then we're really moving towards an execution phase and permitting and working with local partners in the locations that we select. So very busy year for us, and some very big milestones. We're looking at a team to support that, and we've got part of the team in place, and really need to build out the team in those locations that we choose to operate. And that's obviously a critical milestone for us. So in summary, Medallion Resources has two parts to its business model, and certainly the last time I spoke here, we only had point one, and we're now sitting here with point two, which is great for the company, and it's really put the company in very good shape and giving us a much broader reach and bigger conversation that we can have with customers. So we are tightly capitalized. We've got enough cash in the bank. We've got two sides of the business with R&D going on. We're moving towards execution. But I guess the bigger story, rare earths are very important in the energy transition, and it's a very exciting part to be in. And we're going to see that macro theme develop for a very long time. And so that's a very exciting part of the business to be in. So Medallion is uniquely placed to deliver on the rare earth opportunity. Our capex is going to be relatively modest versus our peers. Our timelines are going to be relatively short, and that gives us a great opportunity to form those relationships with customers and become a very long-term sustainable supplier. Please reach out to me for any questions, and very happy to have conversations offline and answer any questions directly. And I'll hand back now to Campbell, and we can go to a Q&A stage, and happy to provide more information at any time. So please email me at that address, and let's have some Q&A. Thank you very much.
I want to thank those of you who sent in some great questions, and we also have some good questions as well. Gabe already. Can you discuss the difference in profitability between your refining process and technology versus someone, say, who's or entity that's creating an unfinished powder, like Energy Fuels, perhaps? Where is the margin, in production or in refining?
Yeah, so I guess we think about the two sides of the business. So so from our point of view, we have extraction from mineral sand monazite, and we have the separation phase. We don't have the numbers at the moment in terms of the relative profitability, but the step up in value from one to the other is extremely strong. So to go from a mixed rare earth carbonate into separated metals or to separated rare earth oxides, we're seeing a very substantial step up in value. And certainly you mentioned Energy Fuels. I think they've done a very smart business model, and really they're copying what Medallion has been doing. And good luck to them in the sector, and a very smart approach that they've taken.
When will your process be, quote unquote, proven? And if so, how much time, cash will be needed to create a finished product for an end user in volume? So kind of the summary of your presentation.
Sure. I guess when we look at proving a technology, then there's really two sides to what we're talking about. So Medallion has developed a very strong and robust system to take mineral sand monazite and separate it into to extract the rare earth metals. So within that process, there's two parts. There's the chemistry, and then there's the engineering and the design to enable it to be a very efficient process. So the chemistry, I can already say it's extremely robust. There's really very few unknowns in that. We will always do research until the day that we build a facility. However, the unknowns are less than 10%, that's for sure, in terms of the chemistry. We understand very well how to operate the chemistry. In terms of the engineering, because we're looking at the reuse of chemicals, we're looking at the capture of heat, we're looking at some great innovations in that system. Then there's a little bit more to do there, but we've got the partners now that are doing the modelling and the research on that, and so we're very well down the path. So let's say 80% for the engineering, we understand what we need to do, and we're very advanced on that path. So in terms of the finances, then we're a Canadian company. We work under 43-101, so we can't talk too much about finances until we've published the TA. However, we currently have around $2 million in the bank. That's very good for the R&D stage. When we consider execution, then that'll be project finance, and we'll deal with that at the time. But the capital cost will be extremely modest. That's all I can say.
If the market for rare earths is already controlled by China, then why would you sell the end product to China, not to U.S. or Canadian or Australian entities?
Certainly. Our intention is not to be selling rare earths to China. So at the moment, I guess, we see, and perhaps there was some confusion on my chart there. MP Materials sells to China because that's been their business model. They're looking to transition out to US production. Medallion will not be selling to China. Medallion will be providing an ex-China solution, but using the same mineral sand monazite that China is currently purchasing. So for every bit of mineral sand monazite that's mined in the world at the moment, it's diverted into the Chinese market. For us in Medallion, we'll be buying that material either through straight out purchase or through partnerships. And we'll be making use of that material. We'll be separating it into rare earth materials. And the magnet metals will go to US customers, they'll go to Japanese customers, they'll go to German customers, they'll go to UK customers. China perhaps as well. There's certainly no problem about selling materials into China. There's no concern. But we'll find the best markets, and we'll find long-term customers and partnerships in that market.
How does your license with Purdue Hassler differ from that of American Resources Corp? Do you have an exclusive license to use that process for monazite production, or something else?
Yeah, certainly there's a lot of overlap in the licensing process. So they're mirror images of each other, the two licenses. The license that Medallion has is an exclusive license to make use of the technology for all mineral source products and waste materials. For American Resources, they have the opportunity to use the technology for coal source products and also for recycling streams like magnets and batteries. So for Medallion, we're able to use the LAD process for mineral sand monazite. We can use it for any hard rock mine in the world. We can use it for red muds or for tailings or for apatite or for waste from uranium projects. There's a great list of what we can use it for. So not only are we applying it to our own needs, but we're also going to be applying it to those other needs. And we've already started some of those discussions where customers are interested in finding a far cheaper and environmentally sustainable method for rare earth separation. And the lab process is exactly that, and that's the reason that we partnered. It suits our business model extremely well, but it also suits our environmental thinking very well, where we're using a waste material. So the great beauty of the lab process, and I know for American Resources they're inspired by this as well, is that it's a water-based process. It doesn't use solvents, it doesn't use harsh chemicals. It's a closed circuit, and so yeah, it's a very benign way of separating rare earth elements. And yeah, Linda's done a great job in developing that technology.
Someone has noted there's other companies talking about utilization of monazite. Notes that makes a comment that Energy Fuels might be ahead of you. Can you comment on this, especially since they already are dealing with radioactive materials?
Sure. No, and yeah, Energy Fuels is a participant in the space, and yeah, we certainly wish them all the best and success. But I guess the difference between what Energy Fuels is doing and what Medallion is doing is Energy Fuels is using a legacy site that has got some built infrastructure and in one location. So mineral sand monazite will travel a very long distance to get to Utah, and they'll process it on site there. Absolutely, they can handle the uranium and thorium on site there, and that's a great advantage. For Medallion, we've developed what we call a best-in-class technology, which does not need to sit in one location. It can be used in many locations around the world that we have identified. And so we can sit much closer to the supplier of the mineral sand. We're able to, our design is scalable, so as the customers grow, we are able to grow our process and add on extra reactors and increase our throughput. And I guess, yeah, the process we have designed is very low impact in terms of its waste management and the products it produces. So not only do we produce the rare earth product, we also produce a phosphate product, and that can go into markets as well if we have our site in the best location. So we're able to choose the best locations, both economically and also in terms of waste management, and that gives us an advantage. And but I guess, yeah, in terms of the broader picture, the rare earth market is big enough for many success stories. There's we're really not competing in the market. The market is growing faster than any of us can keep up with, and that's the really exciting opportunity, I think.
Great, thank you. Art?
Thank you. I'm wondering how these monazite feedstocks are varying from each other, and how extensive capital modification you have to do in your proposed plant if you change the feedstock type.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and really that is one of the core fundamental advantages of mineral sand monazite in general, and the Medallion monazite process specifically. Because mineral sand monazite comes from, let's call them beach sands, the action of the waves and the winds that's created those beach sand has really done the hard work for the mineral sand miners. And so whether it's zircon or titanium, but also for the monazite that comes from any of those locations in the world is almost identical. And that's because the beneficiation process has been very similar in every location. So we're able to take samples from anywhere in the world with a very small amount of data from a small sample. We're able to make a very minor refinements to our process, and we know that material will go through. So yeah, the cost of changing the plant is insignificant. We're able to blend, we're able to take single source, we're able to change the source of the materials over time. No problems at all because of the homogeneity of the mineral sand monazite. The only places that it really does vary are the ratio of the rare earth metals inside the monazite. We see some variation in that, and we also see some variation within the uranium and thorium content. And yeah, so that will determine some of our process and purchasing decisions. But that's a very small difference. It doesn't really change the chemical requirements or the energy requirements.
Do you think in the future, in addition to revenue from the rare earth products, you think you can potentially make some revenue by commercializing this technology maybe helping some other players?
Absolutely, and yeah, the licensing agreement that we have written from Purdue is designed with that in mind. So yeah, not only are we applying the technology to our own needs, but yeah, we'll be applying the technology to other companies' needs as well. And there's some very obvious potential partners there that we have started to talk to, and excuse me, and yeah, those who are close to making decisions on separation. Then yeah, the process that's been designed by Purdue University is one that really is sitting close to the front of the pack. And I guess yeah, we can think about the way that we came across the Linda Wang's technology, and that was by looking at the playing field. We looked at 25 different technologies, and we compared the embedded technologies of solvent extraction with some of the emerging technologies. And yeah, we didn't really see sort of a clear winner in that set. So we did a deeper dive, we did additional research, and that identified Linda's technology for us. So we've had a couple of very good independent scientists take a look at Linda's technology on our behalf, and yeah, it's a very exciting to see a technology sort of just coming to the fore like that, and yeah, and we know that it's going to be a game changer, and yeah, it's great to be an investor and yeah, to get the economic benefits from that.
Thank you, Mark. Gabe?
Thank you. Thanks, Mark, for doing this presentation this morning. Just wanted to ask around, you know, you mentioned sort of cash, and I know you got a lot of warrants outstanding. Do you know what the value of all those warrants would be if they come in? I assume they're all in the money at this point.
Sure, and yeah, at current prices, every warrant that we have an option as well outstanding is in the money. So we recently released that we'd raised about $800,000 in the first 2 months of this year in warrant exercises. So yeah, that creates a little selling pressure sometimes, but we're seeing great cash inflows from that. So we're very pleased to have yeah, to have the support of existing shareholders. So outstanding, we still have yeah, measured in multiple millions. Yeah, so around $3 million, I think, is still outstanding in terms of what we could raise from warrants. And yeah, with strike dates that run out over the next 3 years. So yeah, we're seeing that come in progressively. And I think that's been a great way to fund the company. And yeah, we're happy to get money from existing shareholders at any time, and they've shown the support in the past. And we're yeah, we're very happy to have them as increasing shareholders.
Great. And do you think that capital is enough, assuming it all comes in, to fund the remaining R&D activities prior to a project finance decision?
Yeah, certainly the greater portion of it. So yeah, we're not yeah, we're certainly not talking fundraisings in the short term, and we have a great R&D path in front of us. But yeah, the capital we have available will certainly cover yeah, the greater portion of that. Obviously, when we roll across to looking more specifically at site selection, and we look at obviously the project finance, then yeah, a whole different financing structure will be used in that regard. So yeah, that's further in the future. But yeah, certainly for the R&D phases, then we're in great shape.
And on the techno-economics, as the TA that's coming out, were you able to incorporate any of the LAD technology into that, or is that going to be for a future release?
That one will be for a future release, because yeah, we just didn't have the time or the opportunity to do the same level of engineering, I guess, on that technology. So yeah, as you know, we've been working on the Medallion monazite process, the extraction phase, for around 5 years, really solidly. And so that 5 years of data is now being squashed into the one techno-economic model, along with the life cycle analysis and the financial inputs. We just haven't had the oversight and the data to be able to do that for the separation, the LAD process yet. So that will come, but yeah, not at this phase.
And in terms of timeline, what's your best guess for when you'll have enough confidence in combining the two and putting something out to market?
I can't say that yet, but yeah, let's be hopeful for later this year. That would be our target.
Great. And just one last question, then a lot of good audience questions, so I'll let Campbell take those. But just around the market in general. So you mentioned there's the market's growing aggressively. But you also mentioned there's significant quantities of monazite available in the market. What do you think about, or what's your view on hard rock projects versus monazite filling the demand gap?
Yeah. Yep, sure. Yeah, a very substantial question there. So, yeah, certainly we have done a fairly deep dive on the availability of monazite, and yeah, we understand the existing supply chain. Yeah, that's coming particularly from yeah, from public companies that are listed in the UK or listed in the US or Australia. So we have a very good understanding of that, and we can see very substantial monazite availability once there is a non-Chinese customer for that material. And in fact, it's now switched around for those companies calling us rather than us calling them, which is a nice change. So we're doing the techno-economic assessment is done on 7,500 tons per year of mineral sand monazite. Availability in the market is perhaps an order of magnitude larger than that. So yeah, we can scale up and use that material as we need to in the future. And obviously, we'll be moving quite quickly to meet the market. And the monazite process and the separation process really are designed for fast execution. And so, yeah, once the R&D is complete, once the site is chosen, we can really run hard at this. In terms of the hard rock projects, and yeah, I've been the CEO of a company with hard rock projects before, and so yeah, I know that market very well. Absolutely, the world needs more rare earths, and absolutely there will be success stories amongst those hard rock projects. But yeah, we don't need many of them. They need to be in the right locations. They need to be the right mix of metals, and that's particularly NdPr rich or dysprosium rich. And I think they really need to have byproduct materials as well, because if a company is raising $300 million to $500 million, then yeah, the rare earth market is quite volatile to be raising that much capital into, and so I think the byproducts allow that that to balance a little bit more appropriately, and then yeah, it comes down to where the project is as well. I think yeah, remote locations requiring big infrastructure, yeah, that obviously needs a very positive view on the market, and yeah, I'm not sure that much risk capital is there at the moment, but yeah, let's see, one day it will be.
Thank you. Campbell?
Sure. Thorium, impact, or uranium on the economics and ESG of monazite processing seems to be a common or crucial issue. How does the Purdue LAD process interact with the thorium uranium issue, or is this a minor tailings issue?
Sure, I guess there's a yeah, there's a few key parts of that question, and yeah, obviously whenever we talk about mineral sand monazite, we talk about uranium and thorium, and so we'll be extracting a uranium and thorium product. In some locations that will have great value, and that will be going to customers. We're seeing a lot of interest in the uranium market at the moment, and yeah, there's potential for that to yeah, to be a feedstock there. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion presently about thorium reactors, and we can certainly provide a thorium product that could go into a thorium reactor. And the great beauty of thorium reactors is that yeah, there's no overlap with the weapons industry, and so suppliers can be very reassured that that the future use is appropriate. So when we look at the LAD process, our rare earth extraction process, the Medallion monazite process, already deals with all of the uranium and thorium, so it does not cross it over into the LAD process. So we have a chemical and technical process to remove the uranium and thorium into one product, and so therefore it's not delivering across into the LAD process. We are, of course, looking at places where we can optimize, and the LAD chromatography process has some great innovations, and I guess learning from the pharmaceuticals industry where perhaps we can apply it to other points within our process, but that's something to learn. So it's something we've resolved in the Medallion monazite process. We understand radiation management extremely well, and yeah, at the moment we're not planning on delivering any kind of radioactivity at all into the LAD process.
Assuming the study is published on time, how soon could you build a plant? How much metal will 7,500 tons of feedstock produce? How much would such a plant cost? how much money do you need to raise in the next year?
Okay, well, yeah, lots of questions there, and I'll break them down into parts. So if the TA is delivered on time, and it will be very close, we're seeing the information flow from that. So yeah, I'm not too concerned that it's going to be very delayed, but yeah, always in the hands of contractors. We can't give a fixed date on that one yet. We will then have almost all the information that we need in terms of execution of the project. But it also identifies area where we need to do a bit more learning, and it will identify places that have the maximum cost, and it will have the places that that we have some extra technical data to achieve. So I can't really look past that timeline yet. But in terms of execution, really the next phase for us is to take that techno-economic model and start talking in really specific detail to potential suppliers of mineral sand monazite and the locations that we're going to be working. And so this will be the first time that we've really had the opportunity to say, this is exactly what the plant looks like. This is exactly what the energy requirements are, the chemical requirements, the effluent. And I guess, yeah, you mentioned tailings in that question. The mineral sand monazite process that we've developed does not have liquid tailings. It only produces either products that will go into the market, or it produces a solid waste product, which yeah, is potentially a marketable product as well that goes to yeah, a uranium thorium customer. So yeah, so I think that was those parts of the questions. In terms of the financing and in terms of the capital cost. The capital cost will come through in the TEA. We've got internal numbers which, yeah, under the Canadian system we're not allowed to share. When we have those external numbers, then they'll be shared immediately. And but yeah, very, very modest cost for what we're achieving. And I think the last part of that question was yeah, was how much NdPr comes from 7,500 tons. It depends on the feedstock that we take in and the ratios of the different rare earth metals inside that. Monazite as a mineral, it has around 60% of total rare earth oxide. Usually we see around yeah, 20% up to 25% neodymium praseodymium, which means multiply the amount of monazite that goes in by 13 or 14, 15% of that range, and that kind of gives a feeling for how much NdPr will be produced.
Okay. Will the niobium content in most mineral sands interfere or affect in the separation of the REEs?
Not at all, and really we're working on the feedstock at the moment, but it's in the best interests of the mineral sand provider to provide us with a very clean product, because they want to be taking out all the valuable materials from it. So essentially, when we look at the mineral sand monazite feedstock that we receive, it will be around 90–92% monazite within that feedstock. The extra sort of 8 to 10% will be a tiny amount of zircon, a tiny amount of rutile or ilmenite, and quartz sand. And so those other minerals will just pass through the process and be unaffected by yeah, by our processing. And so yeah, they come in the front and they go out the back, and they yeah, they have no impact on the process.
Good. Want to thank everyone for tuning in. We've had a great session and some really great questions. People have done their homework. Please, why don't you cue you for feedback? Please share a few lines. It'll make it to Melbourne in short time. The replay will be available in about an hour at amvestcapital.com/webinars, and you can follow Medallion and Amvest Capital at Twitter and LinkedIn sites and YouTube actually. So share. This will be up on YouTube in a week, and you can share that with your friends and post it. With that, Mark, you've got the floor to close us.
Not much more from me, Campbell. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present, and yeah, look forward to coming back in a few months with some updates. And I think really, as soon as the TA is published, then yeah, this will be a great forum to share the details of that. And yeah, along with shareholders, yeah, us in management are sitting on the edges of our seats, yeah, looking forward to the results. And yeah, that's the real milestone for the company that we've been working forwards for 5 years. So yeah, that sits in front of us, and it'll be available yeah, very soon.
Great. Good day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lucky.
Bye now. Yep.
Have a good evening there, and thank you very much to everyone for listening in.